Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us today, and as we embark into the world of document generation. My name is Nick Adams, and I work here at PDFtron on the marketing team, and I'll be here to communicate with you in the chat bar on the right-hand side of your screen. Today, leading the charge on our DocGen journey, we have Andrei Safonov. He's the head of product here at PDFtron. And we highly welcome all of your questions. We'll try to answer as many as we can, and we'll have a designated Q&A period at the end of the session. So again, please submit any questions or in the chat, anything there in the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll be sure to help you out. Okay, let's dive in. Andrei, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining. We're going to have a fun hour kind of scheduled. I don't think it's going to take a whole hour, so hopefully we'll get you some time back in your day. But today we're going to talk all about document template generation, and we're going to go through a couple of different approaches, how it's done today, what formats templates are handled in, as well as client-side versus server-side kind of approach. And with that, I prepared some of the slides to kind of help us guide along, as well as prepared a code along practice that we can do at the end of this as well. So just going to go ahead. You should be seeing my screen now with the slides. So yes, topic for today's webinar is document template generation. Let's dive in. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the use cases of where this is applicable. Then we're going to talk about the different formats that your templates are possibly in today, the format they're in today. And I have a question kind of prepared away for you from the poll as well, where you can kind of tell me what format is it in again. So just keep an eye out for that question when it drops. And then we're going to talk about the capability that PDFtron solution offers right out of the box for template generation. And we're going to discuss a few different approaches, client-side versus server-side. And then after that, we'll do the Q&A for the people that might want to drop off after this presentation and don't necessarily want to partake in the code along. Otherwise, feel free to hang around, and I'm going to show you just how easy it is to implement document generation solution in your app. All right. So first things first, let's talk about the use cases, right? So what are the different types of documents that should be generated? Or, instead of typing them up every single time, we can automate it and save a little bit of time and give a little bit more time back to our users so they can kind of focus on better and greater things. So first use case that comes up quite a bit for template generation is contracts. And contracts can vary from legal, kind of putting together this, kind of long agreements between the two different parties. In real estate, when there's a property handover is happening, and then sales. And for the most part, the contracts can start off pretty simple. However, a lot of the stuff that we see is around maybe optional paragraphs, maybe something that only appears when a certain clause is implemented, or there's specific kind of structure to the name and addresses, company values. Contracts also come up quite a bit in the merger and acquisition space. The next one is we're looking at reports, and that could be kind of financial investment portfolios. We want to see how our portfolios are doing over time, and there's could be some complexity to that. Now we're getting into the tables of kind of asset allocation management. We're getting into some graphs kind of appearing on this document as well. We're also could be looking in sales space as well, how we're kind of performing year over year, quarter over quarter. And there's could be a use case in the project management. For example, in architecture and engineering or construction, we're working with architects and a number of other kind of parties, contractors, and we need to put together a deliverable. And that deliverable could consist of, a number of different resources. So it could be, tables inside of it with some information about the building or how much that specific project is going to take to build. It could be some of the images of the site, or the images of the building, some architectural drawings, and, all that media or all the different content needs to come together in this nice format report that needs to be handed over to the party. Letters come up quite a bit in government. So for example, communication with taxpayers, communication with, kind of depending on the department of the government. They could have some optional paragraphs that the user needs to type in, but their letterhead or the footer is kind of preset, and there's only kind of few variables that are changing. In HR, whenever we extend an offer to web developers, software engineers, wherever, they need to be able to see what their compensation is going to look like year over year. And so far, all the things that I mentioned are still very much a kind of like, I would say, a Word document or a PDF, where we shouldn't be limiting ourselves just for those use cases. We can look for something else. Like, let's look at marketing, or example, same thing, HR. When somebody gets onboarded, they would have a much better experience if we created a personalized presentation just for them that kind of takes their name, their position, and kind of sees how they fit into the company, what are their first few days is going to look like. And as such, we can be doing custom PowerPoint presentations. We can be doing custom documents for the users. And there's way more use cases. Again, if you're a use case, you don't see it on here, do drop it in the chat. I would be kind of curious to read them after and kind of see where you potentially see template generation to be a fit. Now, kind of moving down, let's take a look at the different formats specifically for the template. And when I say template, I'm talking about before the data was merged in. So template is, we agree ahead of the time on a specific format this document should be inside of. And typically when talking about the different templates, we could be starting our templates today in HTML, PDF, or DOCX, or Office formats like PowerPoint, Excel. Now with HTML, they can be dynamically generated as we're querying the data and we're pulling in, and we can just have some kind of preset HTML DOM structure ahead of the time. And then inside of it, we just say, like, we're getting this tabular data, or we need to replace the certain things, and we can just dynamically build something on the fly. By the way, great use case example from Marco, invoice generation with long list of items. And actually in my code along, I'm doing exactly that. I'm going to be doing a sales invoice where we're going to have some items that are going to go on page 2, and we're going to see how tables reflow. And I'm going to explain the reflow term in just a second. But thanks, Marco, for that. So HTML can be just dynamically generated directly in code. As a developer, it's very friendly. You can just kind of type it out. However, the original template creation and updates still requires a developer. Where, for example, the business analyst or the person maybe requesting changes to the report might not be as pro to jumping into the HTML themselves and editing it, or editing some logic kind of directly in their React app or Angular app to change the way that we dynamically generate the HTML content. So there's a little bit of freedom with what HTML stuff can do. However, not always it carries over to the converted format. So for example, to the PDF or Office, just because stuff that you can do in HTML, like crazy animations and whatnot, might not be replicable in a PDF. However, at PDFtron, we do cover that use case, and we can handle HTML to PDF as well as PDF to HTML. So we can kind of go between those formats, no problem. And we do have a great sample code on our GitHub for web to PDF technology that demonstrates how you can kind of dynamically generate anything from HTML, grab the data, populate the data, and then spit out a PDF at the end. And yeah, so that's one approach. But however, today I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to save the best for last and show you that it's the most flexible one. So the next format is just starting with a PDF and finishing with a PDF. So PDF itself, we can have inside of our text elements, we can have placeholders where the content can be replaced. Now, the templates can be updated by the end users now. So it's a little bit more, I would say, more user-friendly in that way. However, editing PDF, there's just not too many solutions out there that do it. And And it does require, for example, an Adobe Reader Pro or another tool to kind of be able to handle and edit those templates. So business analysts can do it. However, it results in, especially if you're running an enterprise and there's multiple users kind of working on it, they might need individual licenses. And that might not be ideal. Now, let's talk about DOCX or Office. Now, we can grab a DOCX, PPTX, or XLSX, so PowerPoints, spreadsheets, or Word documents. They have the placeholders exact same way as a PDF can be, and we can replace it. Now, the difference between kind of the PDF and DOCX Office is, one, we have a little bit more flexibility with not having to worry how the end result or how the end document is going to look like if we have content bigger or larger. And then the table handling is much, much improved when starting out from a DOCX. Now, if you do have all of your templates today in HTML or PDF, and kind of you're like thinking how you can migrate to the solution, again, at PDFtron, we offer HTML to PDF. We offer PDF to Word conversion. So we can go from Word to PDF or PDF to Word seamlessly. Same thing with HTML to PDF, PDF to HTML. So we could do this one-time migration to get our templates to the DOCX, preserve the placeholder structure the way you do it today, whether it's squiggly brackets, mustache brackets, square brackets. We can handle it all. For us, it doesn't really matter because we are a software development kit that can be optimized specifically to work with your type of template or the content replacement logic. And then the templates themselves can now easily be created in any word processor. So we're not limiting you to Microsoft Office or Google Docs or LibreOffice. You can literally, any DOCX processor, any PPTX, any spreadsheet kind of creator, you can go ahead, just download it in the DOCX, PPTX, XLSX format, and boom, you've got your templates. And now for the business analysts or users, it's so much easier to kind of go back in and go ahead and edit those templates. Okay, so we talked about the different templates. Now, let's talk about capabilities. So what we can do with DOCX templates or presentations or spreadsheets. So the biggest advantage here is that we can reflow the content around. And what I mean by that is, in a paragraph, let's say we have a slightly kind of larger content that we're replacing. It's not just a simple name string that we're going to go ahead and replace, but we're actually going to go and replace a full paragraph or add another paragraph. So then we can actually grab and we can reflow the content down to make sure there's no text collisions. And as part of that, we also preserve the styles. So let's say you went ahead and set up your placeholders to look and feel exactly the way you want it. Maybe the name in the contract is kind of bolded. Maybe the amount for how much the company is going to sell for is bolded as well. So we can ensure that that style preservation is there when the conversion takes place or data pre-population takes place, as well as the conversion to the PDF. So the users can no longer edit it and we can send it out for the content. We can also do dynamic tables. And here kind of on the diagram, you see kind of placeholder plus JSON equals kind of your replacement data. Now it's as simple as we can get, right? Coming from SQL databases to now the NoSQL really taking popularity. From both of those databases, you can query the data and then, directly in the web browser or whatever you're kind of hoping to do the replacement or data merging, you can just convert it to JSON and then populate it. JSON kind of became the standard for data exchange on the web. And that's why we kind of wrote our APIs to just allow you to simply work with JSON, regardless of where your data is coming from. And then another capability that we have is image replacement. So it's not just, text replacement. It's not just kind of preserving style on that text, but also grabbing and saying, this is where my logo is going to go, or this is where the image for that report in that deliverable is going to go. And we can go ahead and place it. And you have control over, width and height and certain other properties on that specific image. And, I mentioned earlier kind of the difference of where you want to do it. we're actually going to discuss the different approaches between client side and server side, and kind of you can decide for yourself where it makes most sense for you to kind of replace it. So let's actually talk about it. So most often the way things are done today, whether it's HTML, PDF, or DOCX template, it's probably done server side. And kind of the example I like to use here is, you probably heard of Wealthsimple app, or if you're in other countries and Wealthsimple is not available, Wealthsimple is an end user application that allows you to invest yourself. And you can kind of invest in various stocks or electronically transferred funds, and you build up your own portfolio. Now, keeping an eye on your portfolio is very important. So when I go into my application, it's a web app and it's running across all the different platforms, so I can log in from my browser or mobile. They do query the data and bring me up all the different results of how my portfolios are doing, how the investments are growing. And they do have this feature that I can export that to a PDF, or every quarter they say, hey, there's a report available now that you can kind of go ahead and take a look at how your investments are doing. Now, what I notice every time I hit that button, it takes about 2 minutes for them to go back and generate the report. And to me as a user, it seems a little bit crazy because I can already see all the data just directly in-app in front of me. All I want to do is just now have a nice report PDF so I can save it off for later reference. Now, what I do understand what's happening is I make the request, it goes off to perform the data fetching, then template merging happens, and after that, the PDF is served back. And there's a lot of kind of moving parts. Now, if we take a look at the client side, well, the approach is the exact same way, except we make the user request. The data fetching step is kind of optional at this point because we already pre-fetched all the data to show it to the user. And if all we're trying to do is just export them with the data they're already seeing, well, we shouldn't be doing duplicate queries back to our database or wherever we're storing our data. Now, template merging also happens directly client side, so there's no trip to the server. And then we serve the PDF to the user right away. And so let's take a look at the difference between the two. So with the server side, we have to worry about scalability. So at any given moment, we need to figure out to say, well, okay, do I have enough servers allocated for the specific user volume that I have? Let's say, we notice that our users always hitting us at the end of the month to take a look at and generate the reports, or we're noticing that every quarter. So AWS actually does a great job of providing you with auto-scaling groups. However, that's just an additional layer of complexity that we have to think about. Another thing that we have to think about, and again, we're probably already taking care of that by querying the data, bringing to the front end, but it's yet another step to do the data security, so data fetching, and now it has to travel either to an individual server, and if we're working in government or with kind of our data privacy oriented companies, well, just that additional kind of trip from one data storage to a server back to the client, well, maybe not going to make us eligible for some of the compliance standards that we have to meet. And even though, for example, AWS or GCP or other cloud services are great at providing this functionality of scalability, of adding more servers and kind of growing them horizontally or vertically, it still comes at a cost. And they charge you as your users kind of flock to the system. And it's great to see the number of your users kind of grow within your application. But ideally, you want to keep the cost of your infrastructure down. And as you onboard the number of users, you're not increasing your cost exponentially as you move along this way. And another thing too, user experience. Now, I understand what's happening in the background. So I forgave my kind of Wealthsimple account to, doing that server-side trip fetching, because you probably haven't heard of the PDF solution that I'm about to present to you today. Now, with the client side, there's still some things that we have to consider. So we still have to ensure that the data kind of comes to us in a secure manner. However, we're already doing that today for kind of displaying the user interface to the user and populating with data. And now there's just less trips. It's just one trip, one query. It doesn't go off to anywhere else. Something that you have to think of it if we're generating a 1,000-page report, right? It's a little bit extreme. Most of the reports or contracts, they vary between, like 1 page, 2 pages, 10 pages, maybe 50 pages. And that's still okay for the browser memory. However, if we're generating, thousands of pages and it has really heavy imagery, then this is where you kind of have to say, well, maybe server side is still a better approach, and we can still cover you at PDFtron, wherever you choose to go, server side or client side. But browser memory is the one thing that you have to consider of the size of the reports and the data that's going to go in those reports. And most of the users' machines today, they're pretty powerful and they have enough RAM that we can access through the Google Chrome that we have to worry about it less and less. And that's why client side becoming a little bit more popular every single day, because we don't have to worry about scalability, data security, cost as much, as well as we can strive to provide a better user experience. Now, let's go ahead, and before I jump into the code along, and by the way, we're doing great for time, I'm going to take a look at some of the questions that you have posted, answer them now, and then kind of switch over to my code editor and take a look at how the template generation can take place client side. Okay, so one of the questions came from Chris. Thanks so much for posting. Will refill occur if the placeholders are within otherwise a static PDF paragraph? So if we're working with a PDF format, I believe what we can do is, if we just strictly want to stay within a PDF, we can refill within that specific paragraph. However, the task is becoming a little bit more challenging if we have a paragraph at the bottom, or maybe we have more complex elements underneath it, and potentially there could be some run-ins. However, within that specific paragraph, it will refill. Now, if we do start off from a DOCX and we can offer you the conversion from your existing PDF template to the DOCX template, we can then not have to worry about this issue of the paragraphs running into each other, because they will just get pushed down and reflow as a whole document. And that's just the limitation on the format itself. PDF is not really meant to be the reflowable format. However, at PDFtron, through our R&D department, we have done kind of great steps to achieve that reflowability and that editability. And again, and we're kind of presenting our solution for DOCX as being kind of the clear winner when it comes to reflowability, editability, and making sure that anybody can jump on and edit that specific template. So yeah, so perfect. Let's go ahead and take a look at the questions in the question bar. Will this webinar rather code on? That's already answered. Perfect. Okay, another question. So automate the filling out application from a template, which might become a scanned document with a physical signature that might be preserved, yet additional application information can come over time. Yes. So if you're new to this, I'm going to do, during the code along, I'm going to show you some of the other capabilities. Now, right now in this webinar, I'm kind of laser focusing on the document template generation. However, there's a lot of steps that happen afterwards with the document. So it's not necessarily just generate the document, hand it over to the user, and you're done. We can think about, well, what do they need to do afterwards to make it an even better experience? And WebGear is a powerful SDK that allows you not just generate templates, merge the data, convert from whatever format to the PDF or to DOCX or Word formats. It also allows you to facilitate out of the box a number of other processes. For example, annotation collaboration. So we generate the contract, great. Now the two, for example, let's put a legal hat on. So two parties can now collaborate and hopefully arrive to a conclusion and kind of settle. So they can kind of highlight, they can annotate on top of the document, and they can facilitate that specific workflow. Or let's say we generate a report directly from Salesforce. So WebGear can be deployed on React, Angular, Vue, vanilla JavaScript applications, or it can be plugged and play directly in Salesforce as a LWC component. and then we generate a report for how our sales are doing quarter over quarter. And then maybe there are just some numbers that not all should see. So then we can go ahead, select a region, and we can redact it. And by redaction, I mean just removing all the underlying information underneath it, and then just providing it to our end users. Or as Chris mentioned, one of the use cases is, okay, great, I generate this HR letter offer, or I generated this contract or an invoice. Now I want the user to go ahead and sign. And WebViewer, again, out of the box, offers that functionality that you can just enable with a simple API call. And I'll show you just that. Okay, so what about templates made with Adobe Lifecycle Form Designer, example XFA form? That's a great question. Adobe themselves has actually abandoned XFA as we know it. And their kind of response to, well, how are you going to maintain, or what happens to all the users that do have XFA forms? They just say, well, we simply don't support it. But inside of Lifecycle Form Designer, you can convert it to the new modern format that we switched over, and it's called Acroforms. So WebViewer has full support for the new way of doing forms. And by new, I'm saying, it's 10 years ago that kind of Acroforms have been introduced. We can go ahead and we can kind of designate and work, and we can place where the Acroforms, like input, text inputs, date inputs, signature fields can go, and it can work with the Acroforms, and we can programmatically generate those as well. And thus, PDFtron has YCYG editor for templates. Can this templates be published to the DOCX XLSX? So PDFtron right now does not have a YCYJ editor or for templates just yet. You can use any kind of Google Docs or Microsoft Office or LibreOffice, as I mentioned, kind of whatever your users are used to and using today. They can just continue using that, and then they can upload that template. And that's where WebViewer can pick it up and take it from there. Thank you so much for all your great questions. Now let's switch over to the second portion and take a look at a bit of a code along. So within my Google Docs that you see in front of the screen, and let's make it a little bit bigger, I just went ahead and put this kind of document together. As you can see, I have my company name on here, company address line 1, sales quote, a real funky choice of font here. This is the template that I just pulled from existing Google Docs as a suggestion. So we'll have our quote number prepared for the customer name, prepared dates. We have a bit of complexity here with our items. And as you can see that here, all I have to do is just go ahead and set up my header. And I don't need to type in a placeholder for every single cell. I can just say, hey, this is going to be my role. This is where the data is going to go into. Then after that, there's probably some terms and conditions, and agreed and accepted. And as you can see right now, this is just kind of almost like a non-interactive fields. And if we convert it to PDF, then the user needs a way to fill it out, and I'll show you just that. Now I'll hop over to my code editor, which I have right here. And this is just building on top of our React sample, and I'm going to make this slightly bigger. So again, we'll provide you some links after this webinar so you can kind of pull it in and play around. Now within our React sample, by the way, I'll show you how you can find it. If we go over to PDF, typing on the fly here. So PDFtron, and go to our pinned React sample right here. I actually made this is a branch that we're going to be working on. So if you want to follow along or take a look at the sample afterwards, you can just flip on over to this branch and take a look at how it's been together. Or you can actually refer to pdftron.com. And if you're just wanting to learn more about our solution, you can see all the different capabilities that we offer from our products page right here under the technology tab, see all capabilities. And inside of there, you can kind of scroll and take a look at all the different functionalities like annotation, collaboration, searching, forms, PDFA, redaction, signing, performance optimization, content extraction to power your application. And then we can get into document generation. And if you want to learn more just about document generation, we have all the different capabilities, benefits, and key features that it can handle. You can also play around with a demo or get started just jumping into the code directly. Okay, now that we have this out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look. Now, here's my JSON data that, I'm not going to be hard coding, but for this specific example, I hard coded it just to show you. So I have my company name, I have my customer name, I have company address lines, expiry dates, build items, and etc. As you can see for the build items, all I have to do is just say, I'm going to be inserting rows here and provide exactly the amount of columns that are going to be matching it. And that's as simple as tables get. And then here, this is just standard. So inside of UseEffects, so think about it as a lifecycle component. So whenever it renders onto the screen and this function gets called the first time, we initialize our web viewer and we initialize it with our DOCX quote document that I previously saved off from here, from Google Docs, and I put it into my template location. So inside of my public, I have my files folder and I put the quote DOCX. We'll load it up. And as soon as we say, once the document has loaded, and let's just make sure it's really loaded, we can then go ahead and apply the template values. So it's just a singular API calls to apply the JSON data that's present here. Now, a couple of things to kind of help me as a developer. Maybe there's going to be a template change. So we can actually programmatically detect on the document all the different template keys that are present in the document itself. Now, maybe the user went in, they renamed something, or they add a couple more keys. I can automatically detect those and return me an array of all the different kind of those field names. And then I can do my best to kind of match the data or build my query using that. And if there's certain kind of template key that doesn't get filled in, it doesn't crash or explode. It just kind of moves on to the next kind of data key replacement. So now, okay, this is pretty much it. That's all the code there is to it. There's just a few API calls to get you started. Now let's take a look at what happens. And boom, here we go. Here's my web viewer kind of initialized. And web viewer is just meant to be plugged and played as a component within your React app, your Angular app, Vue app. Doesn't matter where you're building your application, whether it's on Salesforce or SharePoint. You can just plug it in and play wherever. You can supply the document, and then you can supply the data to it. And as you can see, I have a number of different capabilities. I can just view the document. And by the way, you can customize and hide and show any of the capabilities shown here. And perfect. So the data that I have kind of prepared and hard-coded ahead of the time is already populated. And as I do a refresh, just take a look at how instantaneously I can go ahead and boom, it's right here. So it's no longer that 2-minute delay to go off the server side, grab the data, generate the data. It just happens instantaneously in front of the user's eyes. And this is really important for scaling, is that doesn't matter how many users we have, we can just go ahead and generate those quotes, those reports just on the fly. So as you can see correctly here, we place some apples, place some oranges, really expensive apples and oranges for a total of $25. By the way, we can actually automate some of the logic, so we don't have to hard code $25 every time somebody adds another row or that's come back. We can just have some logic built into the JavaScript to go ahead and sum up all the different rows. Then here we have some of the terms and conditions. And as I mentioned, let's actually go ahead and add some signing capability to this kind of directly. So this could be an intermediate step from template generation, data population, and we can go ahead and jump to the Forms tab right here. And I can go ahead and draw a signature block where the user is going to sign, and I can name it. I can also set some field flags like quiet, read only. We'll provide you the customization of what flags you want to be. And then we can also say this is where their name is going to go. This is where their title is going to go. And this is where data is going to go. And then I can also kind of play around adjust, make sure that I get the look and feel exactly right. And after I'm done, I can go ahead, hit apply the fields. And as you can see now, we have a document that can be filled out. And date is today. And when I click on the sign here, it brings this nice dialog to create a new signature. And I can do so by drawing, typing, or uploading. Go ahead and create it. Boom. Here we go. And now this, we have a number of APIs to query the data from this document, from this PDF, to say, did they sign it? Did they fill it out correctly? We can do some form validation. And we can also do digital certificate application. So if you're calling in from Europe or South America, they have actually different requirements for what the signature or what a legally binding signature is. And that said, you need a uniquely identifying digital certificate that we can combine together with the PDF documents. And we power applications like DocuSign for exactly that purpose of applying digital certificates onto the document and then ensuring that the document is legally bounded. So as you can see here from WebViewer is a toolkit that just allows you to kind of build and add features as you go. Previously, I mentioned some of the features where the users can collaborate. Maybe there's some number that's stands out to them, so they can actually select it and go ahead and place their comment and say, shouldn't this be cheaper considering it is apples? And they can ask the questions. We also support kind of at mentions. If we have kind of number of users interacting with the documents, they can tag each other. So add John. We can also facilitate different review and approvals. Maybe after this task is completed or resolved, we can go ahead and set completed. Now, something that I promised earlier to you during this webinar is that let's go ahead and kind of see what the behavior is going to look like if we add a whole bunch of apples and oranges as new rows to our table and how the reflow is going to work. So to do that, what I have to do is just go ahead and insert a crazy amount of rows. Now I'm going to not care for data accuracy here, but I just want to show you how it's going to look like. So let's get crazy with our oranges. Okay, should be good. And let's see how it refreshes. Boom, data populated. And as you can see, we had our items accurately reflow to the next page. And here's the nice part, that it didn't cut off the table in the middle of, and it's really hard for the users on the second page to realize what's going on. It actually carried over the kind of the header from the previous page, from the previous table, recreated here. And as we can see, all our terms and conditions got accurately pushed down. And this can be done not just with tables, but also with more complex paragraphs, images, and other complex text, headers, or styles as we insert information inside of it. So that's all I have prepared for you today for this specific thing. Let me go ahead and double check the questions for this webinar, answer some, and that's pretty much it. Thanks so much for joining. Okay, so there's a question coming in from Kostin Arstin around show demo regarding digital signature certificate. I don't have a demo prepared for this specific webinar. However, I can run you through the different types of signatures that we support. And again, that information can be found from pdftron.com. If you head on over to our capabilities page, you can go ahead and just jump to the sign capability. So we can do e-signature, and you've seen the demonstration of the e-signature, where it just easily goes ahead and applies, our typed signature or our squiggly on top of it. We can do digital certificate signature, where we combine the document with a digital certificate that, depending on your jurisdiction, can be acquired through a government body or a certificate authoring party. We also do support multiple signees, and the way we do it is that multiple people come in and we just append a signature at the bottom, and we ensure that the document hasn't been altered in between the signing. We also do digital approval signature creation, DTS, doc timestamp signature creation, long-term validation signature, and we also do digital signature validation. And by that, I mean we can check the digital certificate that it has been signed with. We can check if it was a valid certificate authority. And we can ensure that none of the elements inside of the PDF document has been changed since the time of signing. Yep. So for example, Scott is asking PDFtron Pixel Perfect template report document. Worded in other ways, will the template created in Google Docs, are you doing result in the document that laid out exactly as it was designed and published? For example, images must appear at specific anchor points in the document and not to be refilled by variable content. Now, Scott, we do have the solution for you. So when it comes to creating those pixel perfect PDFs, the best format to kind of start for that pixel perfect, ensuring that it doesn't refill or doesn't get moved around, would be from a PDF. So in a PDF document, we can have specific anchors, and sounds like for your specific use case, we're going to know exactly what the content size is going to be, so we don't have to worry about collisions or stuff not kind of refilling correctly. So I would just recommend checking our PDF content replacer solution that you can find here. So we can do DOCX template generation, PDF template generation, or HTML template generation as well. So do check out documentation here. Connect with our solution engineering team. They're a great set of people to kind of help you and guide you to create that pixel perfect templating. So hopefully I answered that. Can HTML content be substituted in squiggly brackets in a PDF? Can the HTML have conditional components, say via handlebar conditions? So yes, so it is something that we're going to release in the next updated version of our SDKs, where we're going to have conditionals and for loops when it comes to the handlebars, and we should be able to do that from the PDF or DOCX template if we convert the PDF to DOCX. And that's all the questions in the questions tab. I'm going to go ahead and checking out the chat. Do you have to use Adobe license to use long-term validation signature tool? If not, will yellow Adobe warning appear on top of the PDF? Thanks. Yes. So here, so the question is from Terry is whether or not with the PDFtron solution, if we can make a digital certificate application in such a way that when the user opens it in Adobe, it can kind of show that green check marks, oh, okay. And this comes down to the digital certificate you are applying. So we can do the application of the digital certificate in the most compliant way that Adobe will approve it. You don't need to have an Adobe license for doing this with PDFtron's technology. We have our own technology that we've been perfecting for over 20 years. Now, the question here comes down more to the certificate authority that you're using to actually grab that digital certificate in the first place. So if it is a certificate authority and there's a list of kind of trusted certificate authorities that Adobe provides and says that they can accurately kind of validate with them, then in that case, wherever you got your certificate from, that's going to kind of determine whether or not Adobe will give okay within their application. And WebGear does, by the way, the same thing. So we can do the validation, we can check the certificate authorities, and then we can kind of print information about the digital signature, about who signed it, when they signed it, and who was the certificate authority as well. So is this feature of the default or add-on or requires an extra license? Yeah, so that's actually a great question from Jerry. You can think of it as, really coming in here, just determine where you want to do it, right? So I want to do my template merging just as was shown in today's webinar on web, or I want to do it on mobile, I want to do it for my desktop application, or I want to do it server side. Then the next step, determine which format you want to be handling. So here we're talking about PDFs, or we're talking about Office, we're talking about HTML. And after that, think about all the different features you would like users to have. Do they need to annotate the document, collaborate on top of it, searching? Do they need form capabilities, as we saw today? And form capability could be as simple as form filling, or it could be form creation or editing, as we've seen today. And then after that, you can then kind of contact our sales team and say, well, I only need kind of the following formats I'm going to be deploying on this formats. and this is the functionality I need, and they'll make the license kind of specifically just for you, for your specific use case. So rather than thinking, is this an add-on or is this not an add-on, just think of your use case, think about the features you can use, and you can grow and scale your solution with us as you go. Perfect. All right, so I think I got through all the different questions that came out. So one other question from Scott that just came in: can a PDF template be published to other formats, example Excel? Yeah, so at the end of it, if we have a PDF template that we generated, and after we want to turn it into other format other than the PDF, it is also possible with us. We offer a PDF to DOCX, to XLSX, to PPTX, and that actually came from our most recent acquisition through SolidDocs, which is the leader in PDF to Office conversion. And you will know that you will have the best on the market when it comes to that. And there's a question from Zafar coming in around PDF-Tron digital signatures versus DocuSign. Is there a difference? I mean, from the workflow perspective, where people can e-sign. So PDF-Tron can do everything what DocuSign does. PDF-Tron is more of an SDK solution that you just build out the functionality within your application or within your Salesforce organization or wherever you're kind of building your application on top. DocuSign is more of an end user product for consumptions. It's just plug and play. There's no customization on it. And that's where the biggest difference comes in between the kind of the PDF-Tron, where you can customize it. You can do anything and everything when it comes to digital certificates and digital signatures, versus DocuSign is more of end user products. I know DocuSign has more of their API extensions, but it's just building it more on top of their end user solution. If you want to send a document out for signing, use their UI, where PDF-Tron WebViewer not only provides you this workflow out of the box, but provides you with power to customize it and make it look and feel just right for your use case. Yeah, so the question from Chris: regarding a document that has been scanned in, is there a mechanism to re-add the fields to Acroforms within the same position as the original template that was used to create the document in the first place? And the answer is yes. So that's kind of the power and flexibility of the SDK that we offer, that we can kind of populate the data, we can reflow generate it, and after that, we can determine where the form fields actually need to go. It can be done programmatically, or the user can place them on top. So just again, depending on your specific use case, you can architect the solution. And again, we have a whole team of solution engineers that can consult you and guide you from a technical perspective on how to architect or orchestrate your end-to-end solution when it comes to digital signatures, when it comes to collaboration workflows, or template generation. And do you publish open source templates of common app uses? That's actually a great question, Scott. So we do post, so if you're on GitHub PDF-Tron, we put up some cooler samples for the functionality. So for example, PDF-Tron sign up, actually I built out a complete workflow for what DocuSign does, where we can request signatures from the users. We can send it out for signature collection. We can kind of lock down where only one user can sign the PDF and so on. So with you can see kind of the full example of how we set it up together with Firebase, how we use WebViewer in different components, how we customize it. And we actually worked on latest update for this, where we also integrate some of the email notifications to when the user has to sign the document. They can go and have a one-time link that they can follow without having to create any accounts. Originally, we used the Google authentication. So do check it out and stay tuned for more cooler examples. We'll be sharing them on our GitHub or on PDF-Tron website. Now, a great way to kind of stay in touch with us is just hitting this link in the footer of our pdftron.com website and sign up for quarterly newsletters, product updates, or even beta testing if you're willing to dip your toes into trying something new. Again, I appreciate your time today. Hopefully you enjoyed this webinar, and yeah, stay tuned for more exciting features coming up down the road.